Thank you for this wonderful introduction, Ms. Pravina, and for this opportunity. Good morning, everyone. So, the topic that I'll be making a presentation on today, that is the competencies and strategies to become a lifelong learner, is very close to my heart. Now, this concept of being a lifelong learner is not anything new. However, as educators, we need to come back to it repeatedly so that we are able to inculcate the attributes of a lifelong learner in our students. So, which, as I see, is like the mindset of an explorer, somewhat akin to a n- Nat Geo explorer filled with adventure and awe on an altruistic mission to better the world and create balance, or to venture into unknown areas to analyze. Now, we as educators need to develop in our learners this passion of an explorer towards their subject areas. Now, before we enter into further details of this topic, I would like all of us to watch a short presentation of what a National Geographic Explorer looks like. So let's enjoy this video.
If I was an explorer,
If I was an explorer,
I would wake up, put on my gear,
put on my hijab,
binoculars, a hat.
I would take my tools to investigate.
I'd put on my spacesuit, and then I'd shoot off into the stars.
If I was an explorer,
I'd climb into a rocket.
I'd fly to the sun. I like to go to the places that most people usually don't go to. Explore my city.
I'd tell stories to the world with my photos and videos of my experiences, my discoveries. I'd go to the depths of space,
the bottom of an ocean.
If I was an explorer, I wouldn't care about getting dirty.
I would discover and analyze different things that have never been seen before.
I'll discover new species.
I would take my findings back to the lab
to build things, create new things.
I'd find a cure for cancer.
I'd recycle our trash to build buildings.
and make the world a better place.
Maybe an explorer is all about understanding this world better.
To show the world a different way of seeing.
To venture into uncharted territory.
My name is Arthur Huang.
My name is Hannah Reyes Morales.
My name is Dominique Demille Correa Gonçalves, and this is what an explorer looks like.
So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Some of the words and phrases which stuck in my mind from this video are to investigate, to make the world a much better place, to find a cure for cancer, to fly into the sun, to shoot into the stars, to climb into a rocket. So as you've seen, none of these endeavors are linked with any of the aspects that we assess our students in the report card or in our classrooms. So hence we see that all these endeavors, as we see, are linked with some real life issue. Now, every generation faces a challenge of discerning what capacities and dispositions should be nurtured amongst its young people so that they are ready to handle this complex world and they are ready to face the unknown. Now, engaging in lifelong learning seems to be the only response to the rapid pace of technological and strategic change all around us. So before we delve deep into this, let's look at what we understand by the word competencies. Now, competencies includes knowledge, skills, and behaviors that contribute to individual and organizational performance and success. And some of the attributes of a lifelong learner are being open-minded, being empathetic, having a let's picture approach, being emotionally balanced. Now, we have to strategize as educators. We need to strategize on how to nurture all these attributes in our learner right inside our classrooms every day. Dr. David Perkins, a founding member of the Harvard Project Zero and an eminent author of numerous publications, identifies two things that are detrimental to education. The first being learning the components of the subject without putting them together, and the tendency to foster learning about something at the expense of actually learning it. So, what he means is that when a student wants to learn a sport, he or she learns the junior version of it. So, that is the same rules like professional and also goes through the same processes, undergoes the same emotions, has real life models to look up to and also to emulate. However, when we make our students memorize, let's say, a page of literary devices in English or some mathematical concepts or a series of events in history or something like that, the students are not able to link it with the actual world. So consequently, learning in the classroom does not seem very relevant to them, and they cannot see real life models in action as they are able to see in sports or music, let's say, or maybe dance. So thereby, the students lose the enthusiasm to study and they aren't able to really comprehend how will memorizing all these things ultimately help them in their lives. And hence, they are only more anxious about marks and report cards, university admissions, and rather than focusing on learning and knowledge and its application in the real world in the classroom, the explorer, which is the learner here, and the educator are on the same quest to make the report card look really bright. Let's watch this short video to understand uh, what exactly Dr. Perkins means when he says making learning relevant.
Not the narrow, deep pieces of knowledge that make up a large part of any discipline, but the ways in which the discipline looks outside itself.
Sorry, I'll have to stop the video here because it's just started in the middle, so I'll start it from the beginning. Really sorry about that.
You know, I think one of the most important questions that we face these days in education is, well, one sentence. It's what's worth learning? What's worth learning for contemporary times? What's worth learning for the next 20 years, 30 years? And the trouble is, this very, very important question is really not asked nearly often enough. Discourse around education tends to be about method. How are we going to get youngsters to learn what we've decided they ought to learn? I think that we need to think in terms of educating for the unknown, for what might come up, for nimble ways of thinking about it, for large understandings that can help us code the unexpected as well as the expected. And to me, that means that 90% of what we typically teach is a waste of time. 90% of what we teach probably constitutes particular skills and particular nuggets of knowledge that those kids will never encounter again in a significant way in their lives. It just doesn't matter. Well, that is completely bizarre. We simply have to do better than that. But it's very interesting to ask what this might mean in the context of the disciplines, physics, history, so forth and so on. What is one to do with them and how are they relevant? One way to think about it is that we need to teach content looking for what you might call understandings of wide scope. Not the narrow, deep pieces of knowledge that make up a large part of any discipline, but the ways in which the discipline looks outside itself. There are many rich insights to be found in literature, in history, in science, in mathematics, geography, wherever you want, that can speak very broadly to the lives people live, but they're not the basis of how curriculum is typically organized. we need to rethink that. And it's very challenging because, in my experience, curriculum is one of the most resistant fronts of education.
So as you've seen that Dr. Perkins advises us to prepare the students for the unknown, the same, which as I explained earlier was like the mindset of an explorer. Now, some of these strategies or methods to develop a lifelong learning skill in our students and to make learning more relevant are number one being spaced repetition techniques. So spaced repetition techniques helps to push some of our everyday learning into that long-term memory compartment, so which otherwise we are not able to push. And all that information that we learn every day or we hear every day is simply stored in our short-term memory compartment. And so whenever we want to retrieve that information, we are not able. Hence, um, it is essential that all the information that we learn in our classrooms goes into that long-term memory compartment, and spaced repetition or technique is one of the way it can be pushed into your long-term memory compartment. Another way uh, is to break down the content into small pieces, which is this chunking what you are learning, and after breaking the information into smaller parts, it is much easier to revise them through spaced repetition techniques. And again, the information is retained in the long-term memory compartment. Thirdly, students must also learn to prepare a revision timetable that makes their learning more concrete. Interleaving a revision material rather than learning information in the block method will help students remember information much better. Schools and educators must also have multiple conversations around what to assess. While scores and report cards matter, but real learning must also align with uh, purposeful learning goals. Scores or doing well in a summative assessment or a formative assessment simply fulfill academic um, goals and not learning goals. Hence, schools need to change the core of the school education. We need to go deep and we need to think how to create frameworks to achieve the mission and the vision of the school. And the achievements of these will foster the attributes of a lifelong learner. Moreover, schools and educators can also look into how to evaluate the impact of their everyday teaching and learning, and how to close those knowledge gaps. So the curriculum should be organized to make the classroom content sync with the real world by uh, inquiry-based learning, so which is another strategy to nurture lifelong learning. Um, Inquiry-based learning is a learning process that engages students by making a real-world connections through exploration and high-level questioning. Another strategy is to teach conceptually. As we all know, concept-based instructions is driven by those big ideas rather than subject-specific content. So, which Dr. Perkins also calls that the learning, learning in our classrooms should have a much wider scope. Um, so, as I said, that by leading the students to consider the a context in which they will use their understanding, a concept-based learning brings real-world meaning to content knowledge and skills. So, besides that, we also have the thinking routines, which are a really good way to support and scaffold student learning. Here we see on the slide, so one of the frameworks of a thinking routine, which is aligned with global competency. Another way to nurture the attributes of a lifelong learner in the students is to nurture this what if, so which is allowing the students to dream of endless possibilities and endless avenues of learning. One way it can be done is to embed the design or thinking process or the protocol in the curriculum. So, which is to observe, empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and testing, and then again move back into that loop again. So integrating the design, a thinking protocol into our curriculum will help the students look more closely at the process and not at the outcome. Another way to do is to create a framework for creativity and curiosity. So curiosity, as we all know, is stimulated by the realization of a gap in knowledge or understanding. And this realization creates a sense of a desire or a goal to close that gap. And it often leads to then further action, often through formulating and seeking answers to the question that addresses the identified gap. Now, schools should focus on creating this framework to nurture creativity and curiosity in our students. Um, Now, to sum up, what we understand is that if you want learning to be meaningful in students' life, we must think of the big picture, and we must develop students into lifelong learners. So, what I have been able to understand over the years is that a concept-based teaching and learning through inquiry, making interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary connections help students find purpose and meaning in the uh, classroom content, so which can be aligned with their learning outcomes or learning goals. Um, it helps them to contextualize learning. And I believe that instead of asking the students what they want to become when they grow up, we should be asking them that what issues in the world they would like to explore or maybe this address. Uh, so unless we are able to nurture all these things through some of the strategies that I have shown in this PowerPoint, I really believe that we won't be able to equip our students to face this unknown world. Thank you very much. And I can see that there are some questions in the chat box. So I will take up some of the questions. So the first question says, please tell us about your education career background. I have been involved in the IB education since 18 years. I'm an IB examiner, IB program leader, IB team leader. I play multiple IB roles apart from being the IB Continuum coordinator in my school. I look after the alignment of all three curriculums. Next question reads, are you addressing the students, teachers, or the public when you talk about lifelong learning? First, I address the educators that they have to create learning opportunities in the classroom to help students avail of such opportunities and take ownership of their learning. I also address the students because the students have to walk the talk and they have to make the best of the opportunities created in the classroom by the educators and extend their learning by taking some action on it. I also address the parents because nothing is possible unless there's a mindset shift, and parents must work hand in hand with the educators and the school to help develop a community with growth mindset. The next question asks, why does the topic of lifelong learning interest you? So this a topic of lifelong learning interests me because it seems to be the answer to survive in this world in the future, and it is only lifelong learner who can handle all the complexities in this world. So the learners have to take ownership of their own learning, and if they have to take the ownership of their learning, we have to equip them with certain attributes and skills, and they must understand that what is happening in the classroom is something which will impact their lives in the future. So we have to be able to show our students the larger picture and not only a small component of learning. They have to see the interdisciplinary, multidisciplinarity between the subjects. And I'm also quite passionate about introducing short modules apart from these academic uh, requirements that we have in school, like maybe problem solving modules or the big history module, or analyzing this complexity module. So which where the educator and the explorer or the learner uh, have to work to together to construct meaning and perhaps come up with no answers at all. Now the next question reads: Today's education is associated with exams and lack the joy of learning. How can we encourage lifelong learning? That is true. I also experience, especially when the exams are near and enormous number of topics have to be studied and also completed, and we have the pressure from all quarters that students should perform well. Of course, marks are important, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, but we have to see how to introduce the content in a more engaging manner inside our classroom. We need to see how learning looks like in the classrooms. If the teaching is just focused on transferring information, so then we have the internet to actually do all this job, and it will certainly do a much better job of it. But as educators, our job has to make the classroom, come alive, and uh, so hence I feel that hence I am really passionate about lifelong learning as a topic, and I have also done quite a lot of research on how to use a classroom space as a tool to foster learning and how to make it more relevant. So hence, joy can be brought back into the classrooms only if we motivate the students to look at all these things. The last question is that what are the simple methods to introduce to introduce some of your ideas in schools? Now, in fact, all the methods that I've shown in the PowerPoint are simple methods, but we just have to be very conscious about applying them in the classroom. And so like space learning, or the interleaving method, or making the retrospective revision timetable, or the inquiry-based learning, all are simple methods that can be applied in the classrooms on an everyday basis. But however, earlier to that, the students must be aware of all these methods, and they must understand why we are doing what we are doing. The students must also be aware of how the brain works, and how and this relationship between short-term memory and the long-term memory, and how information can be pushed into the long-term memory. So once the students get an understanding of all these things, and also understand why we are applying all these strategies, nurturing the attributes of a lifelong a learner, and helping students take ownership of their learning is going to be far more simpler um, uh, than otherwise. And all this can be implemented in the class as an effort to initiate lifelong learning. So that's all. Thank you very much. I would like to thank the audience for being so patient and asking such amazing questions. And I would also like to thank once again Ms. Praveena for giving me the opportunity. Thank you.